In today's video, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to preview the next game against Ipswich for Chelsea, but we're also going to take a little look at the Fulham game, a few things that went well, a few things that didn't go so well in that game before we get into which team will face Ipswich and how Chelsea can exploit Ipswich. The first thing I wanted to touch on from the Fulham game is the Palmer goal and just how Chelsea manipulated the space for Palmer in this goal in terms of Enzo and Cucurella, as you can see, splitting the lines for Palmer to arrive in space and almost find himself in a 1v1 rather than having double coverage on him. As you can see, when Palmer takes that touch away, he's already away from that man-to-man press, which means the recovering player can't manage to get goal side of him. He's already away from them, and then he uses the body perfectly to guide it into the bottom corner, and that was just such a Palmer classic goal. And this example shows it again perfectly. As you can see, the Fulham distribution with their press. You got the Jimenez in the middle there, two wingers looking to be compact. And then you got those two central midfielders, which are split using Cucurella and Enzo Fernandez, meaning if Palmer can receive through the middle, he's not going to have that double coverage on him, or he's going to drag them both so far inside, as you can see with his kite shape, that Cucurella or Enzo can actually receive on the outside of that block. But the biggest problem in this game, as you can see here, Gusto was often following Iwobi into these central areas, which was leaving Pedro Neto pinned back by Robinson, who was almost acting like that left winger, forcing, as I say, Pedro Neto to go really deep into those right-back areas and actually dragging out to create those massive spaces with that man-to-man pressure still being applied rather than making a tweak. Now, one way this could have been changed in the second half is if Gusto moved to that right wing slot, basically making him Pedro Neto in this scenario, bringing someone like Achempong into that team, and yes, you have to trust him to do that, then he would be the one following Iwobi into those central areas, looking to win those duels, whilst Gusto is actually the one recovering at pace with Robinson. One final example showing that, as you can see, Gusto initiating the contact. This is where Iwobi would drag him away from play, which would then end up pinning Pedro Neto far further back than Malo Gusto, ending up in these situations where Pedro Neto is essentially the right back, and Gusto's finding himself actually just slowly dropping back into position alongside Iwobi. And for the final goal, I think it just epitomises why Chelsea need to get better at controlling the tempo and just allowing the team to settle into a structure and not panicking and rushing, because this is the picture of what happened after Sanchez's rushed clearance when Chelsea players were not in stable position, and it allowed Fulham to break. They had the numbers on Chelsea, and of course, it led to a goal which ended up being the winner. So overall, I do just think Marco Silva did a good job. I think he tweaked his system perfectly to stunt Chelsea, and I actually think Enzo Maresca failed to address it in the second half. And a bit of a mixture, like I say, in terms of the ability to control the tempo, but I also think he could have made a few changes, but that's okay. We move on to Ipswich, and this is how I think we're going to set up against them. So as you can see on screen, we've got Ipswich set up in basically that back five with the two in midfield, and then you've got more or less two wings and a striker, but we're going to speak about how that can change. Chelsea, we're going to be starting again in that 4-2-3-1. The big changes that I've made in this team: Jorgensen coming into the team as he's not played for a few games now. Achempong in at right back. Again, we're going to discuss why. And then Felix and Madueke both in on the wings. And this again is slightly down to the fact that Maresca did say he's going to make 3 to 4 changes. So that's why I've not gone for a completely rotated side. Now, against Arsenal, Ipswich actually did set up in that back five, but what they do is they still tend to sometimes press in what looks like a 4-4-2, with Ben Johnson having a very specific role as that sort of right wing back / right mid hybrid, as you can see circled in yellow. This allows Amari Hutchinson to join the front two with Delap, making that sort of 2 central pressing unit, and then you've got the 4 behind them with the 2 central midfielders, and then, as I said, Ben Johnson can either apply pressure as a right mid, or as you can see here, he can drop into that back five in more of a low block. And here is a better example. Again, Ben Johnson circled in yellow on screen, but you've got that front sort of 5 pressing unit now for Ipswich. Quite narrow infield, but then you've got that back 5 who has dropped off towards the back in order to stop those balls over the top, and Ben Johnson following those wide players. So how can Chelsea exploit this? Well, as you can see on screen, quite a few arrows to sort of talk about. But setting up in that same 3-2-4-1, Cucurella, I'm expecting to actually hold a bit of width if we are going for the same sort of team that I've gone with Felix on the wing, allowing him to come inside and play in those pockets with Cole Palmer. This would see Cucurella and Madueke pinning those fullbacks back to sort of stretch the line between that back 5 and also then that midfield 3. You would then have a Murray Hutchinson, the one nearest to Colwill, who would then have that dual sort of responsibility of pressing Colwill, but also pressing Tosin as that front two, with the three midfield lines really dropping off. And again, that other wide midfielder having sort of a dual responsibility to press Acheampong. I think with these wide sort of nets, in order to sustain pressure, it could work really well for Chelsea with Enzo, Felix and Kukurea especially on that side to help out and really pin that side back to, as you can see, it forms a bit of an asymmetric shape for the Ipswich team out of possession. So I do think that this shape for Chelsea could help them not only pin that left side, but also pin that right side. As you can see, Madueke being the one pinning further forward, Palmer's there for extra support, and then you also have Caicedo and Acheampong, who are very, very good at winning their duels, but also sustaining pressure with their athleticism on that side of the pitch. Let me know your score predictions in the comments down below. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll be back to normal videos with the tactics board and everything more sort of live done next week after New Year's Day, as again, I've had a little break and I still wanted to get something out talking about the Fulham and the Ipswich games. So please do show your support on this. Leave any questions. I'll try to get back to them in the comments before the Ipswich game, and we'll see you guys in the next one.